This is a case study on United Kingdom's parliamentary system versus the United States presidential system. Let's first start off with some quick facts on parliamentarism. Parliamentarism is the oldest form of democracy. It is characterized by the fusion of the executive and legislative branch of the government in the office of the Prime Minister. Its main issue includes the possibility of a coalition government where no majority party wins during an election, resulting parties to negotiate with themselves to gain a majority and establish dominance. This is an issue due to the instability that it poses in making laws. Since both parties are not originally from the same group, they may have different ideologies in the policy-making process, thereby slowing it down. Our case study for this system is United Kingdom. We shall first discuss a brief history of UK's political system. Britain faced a struggle to transition from an all-powerful monarch to a more representative national parliament that is accountable to the people. A key date in the evolution is in 1215 when King John was forced to sign the Magna Carta, which required him to share his powers with the other barons. This is considered as the first manifestation of citizen rights in the world. The bicameral nature of the British Parliament, which is divided in the House of Commons and House of Lords, emerged in 1341, and the two-chamber model of the legislature has served as a template in very many other parliamentary systems. The final notable event in the British political system is its membership to the European Union on 1973. Through this, the powers of the British government and the Parliament is restricted due to the presence of the European Commission and the European Parliament. British membership of the EU has been an especially controversial issue for the Conservative Party, and in the general elections of May 2015, the victorious Conservatives promised an in-or-out referendum by the end of 2017. Now we go to the structure and primary actors of the UK parliamentary system. It is composed of two major parties known as the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, who almost always alternate victory in elections. UK parties are highly disciplined and that they vote according to their party lines. Coalition governments are not much of an issue in the UK since they rarely happen. As for the relationship of the Prime Minister with the members of the Parliament, it is notable that members of the Parliament are highly responsive to the requests of the Prime Minister because they are conscious of political survival. Furthermore, members of the Parliament desire to have cabinet posts, which is why they are often loyal to the Prime Minister. In this way, the Prime Minister can have his priority laws passed with ease. Currently, Prime Minister David Cameron from the Conservative Party heads UK's parliamentary system. He is considered as the head of the executive branch of the government, although he is also considered as the member of the legislative branch. He was elected to power in the legislative election of 2010, where the Conservative Party won. At present, he is serving his fifth year of being the Prime Minister of United Kingdom. The Queen is the head of state in the United Kingdom. As a constitutional monarch, Her Majesty does not rule the country, but fulfills important ceremonial and formal rules with respect to the government. She is also font of justice, head of the armed forces, and has important relationships with the established churches of England and Scotland. UK's legislative branch is bicameral and divided into the upper house, which is the House of the Lords, that function as peers, and the lower house, which is the House of Commons. It has a watchdog function to the Prime Minister through a mechanism called Question Time, wherein each member of the Parliament gets to clarify or ask questions regarding laws that the Prime Minister wishes to pass or have passed. As mentioned earlier, members of the Parliament are highly responsive because they are conscious of political survival. Now we go to the executive-legislative relations in the UK parliamentary system. The Prime Minister in Britain often leads the government with the majority of seats in the lower house, with membership in the upper house traditionally based on lineage or appointment. Thus, there is a capability to pass nearly any legislation that he desires. Membership of the Parliament tend to be loyal to the Prime Minister due to the ambitions for cabinet positions. A vote of no confidence is extremely rare. The relationship of the executive and legislative branch can be examined better through the laws that the Parliament formulate for the Prime Minister to approve. We will be using the laws passed from 2009 to 2010 because the data on economic and social welfare status of both countries are dated in 2011, which is the most recent data that we can find. This is to further show the effects of the legislations a year after they have been enacted. For the case of the United Kingdom, there have been 41 laws that have been put through the Parliament and have been granted royal assent to officially become a law. An example of which is the Children, Schools and Families Act of 2010, which aims to reform the curriculum and introduce a new licensing scheme for teachers. It also gives rights of students and parents to the school and setting out their expectations to the school system. So as we can see, this is an educational policy that the Parliament has implemented in 2010. The next is the Cooperative and Community Benefit Societies and Credit Unions Act of 2010, which aims to give government support to collective private businesses. This policy is obviously an example of the effort of the Parliament to further spur economic growth. Next is the Corporation Tax Act of 2010 that includes provisions on losses and gifts to charities, various reliefs such as group relief distributions, particular types of companies, and activities
the other side of the
avoidance
spectrum,
and definitions.
which is
U.S. presidentialism. Next is the presidential type of government is characterized by the separation of powers, where the three branches of the government are theoretically expected to have equal powers in the government. It has an element of a consensual system where institutional veto players are in place to check and balance power for each branch. The people directly vote the president and the members of the Congress. Compared to the parliamentary system, members of the Congress are more independent from the president because they are not vying for a cabinet post. The case for this system is the United States. Let us first go over the United States political history. To understand the United States political system, it is important to put it into a historical context. The US had just fought a bloody war of independence from Britain, which is why the founding fathers of the US were so eager not to have a powerful monarchy where power ultimately resided in. This resulted to the deliberate spread of power among the different branches of the government. Moreover, the US is primarily composed of different states with different beliefs and traditions, which is why they see to it that the overarching federal government was restricted to give way for the states to pursue their own interests. The US government is characterized by a fear of a lone executive that has a tendency to be an authoritarian, which is an example of the British monarch. Originally by design, the executive does not hold as much power as it does at present. In terms of accountability, the presidential form of government in the United States yield greater horizontal accountability rather than vertical. The current president of the United States, as we all know, is Barack Hussein Obama II from the Democratic Party. He was inaugurated as president in 2009 and served for his second term in 2012. The president's power in the presidential system is more numerous as he is also considered as the head of the state, commander-in-chief, permitted to approve or veto legislations and enter into treaties with other nations. In the US, the president has a fixed term of 4 years and can be ousted from position only through impeachment. For the legislative branch of the United States, it is a bicameral system composed of the upper house, which is the Senate, and the lower house, which is the House of Representatives. As a natural consequence of the principle of separation of powers, the U.S. Congress as a whole is considered to be autonomous from the President. Primarily because of this autonomy, the U.S. Congress is considered to be the most powerful legislature in the world, although some individual legislators still vie for the president's approval. For the executive-legislative relations in the presidential system in the United States, the president and the legislature are independent from each other. In theory, the US President possessed more power than the British Prime Minister. However, the system of checks and balances provided for by the Constitution limits his or her power. The separation of powers usually translates into a gridlock or the inability to pass a major legislation. For example, the recent government shutdown due to the inability
For
to
the laws passed in the
enact a
US,
budget
we will also
law
be
in
using the
time, leading to a
legislations
wide array of
passed in
political
the
and economic
111
consequences.
Congress from 2009 to 2010 to further examine the effects on economic and human capital development dated 2011 onwards. There are a total of 383 public laws that have been through both the lower and upper house and have been signed by the president to become a law. Only 2 laws have been vetoed by the current president. The following are some of the more prominent laws implemented concerning the healthcare system in the United States. An example is the Children's Health Insurance Program Reauthorization Act of 2009, the Veterans Healthcare Budget Reform and Transparency Act of 2009, Ryan White HIV/AIDS Treatment Extension Act of 2009, TRICARE Affirmation Act, Caregiver and Veterans Omnibus Health Services Act of 2010, Preservation of Access to Care for Medicare Beneficiaries and Pension Relief Act of 2010, etc. The policies on education include the following: America creating opportunities to meaningfully promote excellence in technology, education, and science, or America Competes, Reauthorization Act of 2010, Post 9/11 Veterans Educational Assistance Improvements Act of 2010, Healthcare and Education Reconciliation Act of 2010. The American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009, Omnibus Appropriations Act of 2009, and the Special Inspector General for the Troubled Asset Relief Program Act of 2009 are policies that have been implemented to further spur growth in the business sector. There are theoretical assumptions based on the executive-legislative relations in a parliamentary and presidential system. For the parliamentary system, the fusion of power results to a more stable and efficient creation and execution of laws theoretically. While in the presidential, the separation of power is expected to result a gridlock or the seemingly inability to pass major legislations,
We shall now
and
go
therefore
on to
less
compare the
efficient in the
most current
creation and
data
execution
available
of
for the
laws.
economic, health, and education sector of each country and determine which system may lead to a better status. Let us first determine the independent and dependent variables. The independent variable is the political system, which is parliamentary for UK and presidential in the US. As discussed earlier, the research treats the enactment of laws as an indicator of the relationship between the executive and legislative branch. We have seen that by virtue of the number of laws passed, the US has passed a greater deal of laws from 383 public laws versus the UK's 41 bills that have been given royal assent. The dependent variable are each country's current data on economic, education, and health sector. The research question goes, in terms of executive-legislative relations, which political system is more efficient in policy making and comes up with better laws to provide for its citizens' social welfare? For the economic indicators, we included the GDP, PPP or the Purchasing Power Parity, GDP real growth rate, the unemployment rate, and also the youth unemployment rate aged 15 to 24, the population below the poverty line, and the household disposable income measured by the annual growth percent. For the GDP and Purchasing Power Parity or PPP in 2011, the UK's PPP is valued at $37,300 while the US's PPP is valued at $51,400. This is a clear indication that the US is far ahead from the UK. However, in the succeeding year, the UK's PPP diminished by $200 while the US's PPP increased by $1,000. Obviously, the US therefore wins this match. For the GDP real growth rate in 2011, the UK has a growth rate of 0.9% while the US had 1.8%. In the following year, the UK only had 0.1% and diminished by 0.8%, while the UK increased to 2.8% or more than 1% of growth rate. Therefore, the United States also wins this match. For the unemployment rate,
The UK has 7.8% unemployment rate in 2012 while the US had 8.1%. However, in the succeeding year in 2013, the UK had 7.2%, a diminish of 0.6%, while the United States diminished from 8.1 to 7.3%. This is a 0.8% diminish in the unemployment rate of the United States. For youth unemployment rate, the United Kingdom has a total of 21% unemployment rate for the youth, while the United States has only a 17.3 unemployment rate. Therefore, the United States can be concluded as the winner. For the population below the poverty line, the United Kingdom has 16.2% of its population below the poverty line, while the United States has 15.1% of its population in the poverty line. Therefore, the United States has better edge in this field. For household disposable income or annual growth percent, the United Kingdom in 2011 has negative 0.9%, while in the United States, it has positive 2.7%. In the succeeding year, the United Kingdom has positive 1.6%, while the United States garnered positive 3.2%. Therefore, the United States also wins the match. As a summary, for the economic indicators, the United States gained more edge compared to the United Kingdom in all 5 indicators that the researchers included. For the demographics, the indicators include the infant mortality rate, life expectancy at birth, HIV/AIDS, or the adult prevalence ratio, the people living with it, and the deaths, drinking water source, sanitation facility access, and the health expenditures on health. For the life expectancy at birth, the United Kingdom has a total population of 79.56 years, while the United States population is 80.42 years. Therefore, the Americans have longer life compared to the Brits. For the infant mortality rate, the United Kingdom has a total of 4.44 deaths per 1,000 live births, while the United States has 6.17 deaths per 1,000 live births. Therefore, the United Kingdom has better infant mortality rate than the US. For HIV or AIDS, the United Kingdom's adult prevalence ratio is 0.2%, while the United States has a bigger amount, which is equivalent to 0.6%. For the people living with it, the United Kingdom has approximately 85,000 individuals, while the United States has a number of 1.2 million individuals. For the deaths, the United Kingdom has fewer than 1,000 individual deaths, while the United States has a share of 17,000 individual deaths. Therefore, the United Kingdom has a better data on HIV/AIDS. For the drinking water source, the United Kingdom has a 100% improved drinking water source either in urban and rural areas. While in the United States, the improved drinking water source only included 99.4% of the urban area, while there is a 98% in the rural areas. Therefore, the United Kingdom also has better drinking water sources. For the sanitation facility access, the United Kingdom has 100% improved areas for urban and rural areas, while the United States also has the same 100% of the population with 100% improved sanitation facility access. Therefore, the results for this area is inconclusive. For the health expenditures of each country, United Kingdom allocates 9.3% of its GDP and the health expenditure, while in 2011, while in the US, it allocates 17.9% of its GDP. Therefore, the United States allocates more of its budget to the health expenditures of the country. In summary, for life expectancy, the United States won, and for the infant mortality rate, HIV/AIDS, drinking water source, the United Kingdom won, while in the health expenditures, the United States spends more on its health care system. The last sector that we examined is the educational sector, where the literacy rate and school life expectancy are chosen as indicators. For the literacy rate, it is important to take into consideration the definition of literacy that each state has given. For the UK, literacy means that the individual must be of age 15 and over and has completed 5 or more years of schooling. In the case of United States, the definition is only individuals age 15 and over who can read and write. Both countries have the same literacy rate at 99%. Therefore, the result for this indicator is inconclusive, although it can be argued that the UK has a stricter definition for literacy. For the school life expectancy, both countries exhibited almost the same time span at 16 to 17 years. But the US wins because its average school life expectancy is longer at 17 years. We shall now go to the group's summary and conclusion. Here's the chart showing all the indicators that the researchers have used and results obtained from the most recent data for each country. For the economic indicators, the United States won 4 of the 5 indicators, while the United Kingdom only got 1, which is the unemployment rate. For the demographics, the life expectancy was gained over by United States over United Kingdom, while the infant mortality rate, HIV/AIDS, and the drinking water source was won over by the United Kingdom from the United States. For the sanitation facility access, the results were inconclusive, while for the health expenditures, the United States is proven to have spent more money on the healthcare system compared to the United Kingdom. For the education, for the literacy rate, the results were inconclusive, while for the school life expectancy, the United States has more edge over the United Kingdom. Out of the 13 indicators, 7 affirm that the laws in America are more effective in providing for the social welfare of citizens as compared to only 4 indicators that attest to the effectiveness of British laws. 2 indicators were deemed to be inconclusive due to the fact that the data gathered turned out to be similar for both countries. This conclusion is apart from the number of laws that each legislative branch has passed over a year from 2009 to 2010, where the United States has in par more laws that have passed compared to the United Kingdom. The possible rationale. Due to the fact that the executive and legislature are independent from each other in a presidential system, the prevalence of laws whose interests are merely self-serving is less likely. Laws passed tend to be beneficial to the general public than to the people in office as compared to parliamentary systems wherein the scope of laws is more narrow, especially when a party has the majority in the legislature. There's also the issue of stability, which is more upheld in a presidential system of government. This leads to better steadiness in